Hey, this is episode number 54 of Gen X Amplified, and today we are talking with Ken Coleman, career coach, Ramsey Personality, best-selling author, host of the Entreleadership Podcast, and the host of the Ken Coleman Show. And we are actually going to be unpacking his latest book titled The Proximity Principle, the proven strategy that will lead to the career you love. Great stuff. So, are you ready? Let's do it.
And so the proximity principle kind of pulls away those lies of fear, doubt, and pride, and it shines the light forward on, wait a second, I can actually switch gears at 43.
Welcome to Gen X Amplified, where we bring you inspirational and entertaining conversations with successful Gen X leaders and entrepreneurs.
This is the show created just for you. The powerful generation between the boomers and millennials to help you amplify your story,
Maximize your impact,
and become Gen Exceptional in business and in life.
Now, here's your host, Adrian Porter.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Amplified. This is the podcast dedicated to amplifying and giving a voice to the very powerful generation of leaders between those brilliant boomers and magnificent millennials. And as always, thank you so much for subscribing, for listening, and for your download. I truly appreciate it. So today we are going to deep dive into one of the things that I am so passionate about, you know this, and that is how you, especially my fellow Gen Xers, mid-career professionals who are feeling stuck in their career, how you can get unstuck and achieve the goals that you so desire. Because my guest is a career expert, best-selling author, national radio host, and a highly acclaimed interviewer. Now, as a broadcaster, he equips, encourages, and entertains listeners through thought-provoking questions, helping them unlock their passions and move toward a fulfilled purpose. And he is also the host of the Entreleadership Podcast, which is a top-rated podcast founded by the one and only Dave Ramsey. Now, as an author, in 2013, he released his first book, One Question, Life-Changing Answers from Today's Leading Voices. But it is his latest book titled The Proximity Principle that has been flooding the bookshelves, the Kindles, their earbuds in audible form all across the globe because of its practical and proven strategies designed to help people move closer towards a career that they love. So here to unpack this book and so much more, without further ado, please welcome my Gen Exceptional guest, Ken Coleman from the Ken Coleman Show. What's going on, Ken?
Well, Adrian, I'm sitting there listening to you talk about me, and I had to make sure that was me. You were saying all these wonderful things. But so fun to be with you. And as a fellow Gen Xer, I'm really excited about what you're doing in this program. It's so valuable. So delighted to be here.
It is an honor. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate the words, Ken. I've been a fan for many years as well of your work. I've actually been an avid listener to Entreleadership for a while. I had one of your fellow comrades on the show, Chris Hogan.
Yes.
And I told him back in the day, I used to love listening to him, and then he passed the baton to you. And I'm a big fan of Ramsey and also a big fan of your show and what you're doing with your platform, especially in this field of helping people become unstuck. And so we're going to have lots of fun. And you being a fellow Gen Xer, I know you have a lot of insights on how we could help lead these magnificent millennials and boomers in the jobs once we become unstuck and stay in the career that we love. But before we get into the proximity principle, Ken, I would love for you briefly, if you don't mind, for our listeners, if you can just walk us through your professional and personal journey that led you to your current role as a career expert, as an author, a Ramsey Personality, and a radio host.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you the really brief version.
Yes.
I went to college because I felt like I was going to have a full-time career in politics, public service through public policy. And so I left college early, actually, to work on a couple of big political races. And those opportunities led me to full-time work, never returned to college because I was in the field, and did that for several years, and then made the transition to the private sector and the business sector because I wanted to have a business resume, leadership and business resume, so that I could run for office one day. That was the whole track I was still pursuing.
Wow.
And in that season of building and leading a company, I had some great roles and kind of had that resume really exactly how I had planned it. I realized that I had lost the passion for politics. And so went through a season of discovery. And in that season realized that my love of broadcasting was something that had become my highest passion, and the dream was to host a national show that would be dedicated to helping people. And so went through that whole process of discovery and figure out the plan, what's the best way to get there, and started my own business so that I would have the freedom to the extent that I could, the freedom to set my own schedule and pursue this dream job while, leading my own company in the day job. And so that process started. It took right at 7 years.
Okay.
To get to the point where I joined Ramsey Solutions. Dave Ramsey brought me on the team. We had developed a friendship, professional friendship. He'd been watching what I'd been doing in broadcasting, asked me to join the team in 2007. I did. And I was doing three things: hosting the Entreleadership program that you mentioned earlier. I was hosting all the Ramsey live events as the MC. And then I was also the host of the Dave Ramsey Show video channel, doing multiple live and tape video packages and parts of the show that was being streamed online. So that was the three-headed role. And then about 2.5 years later, I moved into the Ramsey Personality role as host of the Ken Coleman Show to do what I had been developing and dreaming about for a long time, which is broadcasting to help others become clear about what they were created to do, and then give them a plan so they can make that dream a reality. So that's the quick synopsis of the career. And I say quick because it seems like it all worked out beautifully and went so lickety split.
Right.
But it did not.
Wow. That's a great, I guess, overview of your journey. And it's a very interesting journey. You mentioned you started in politics and then you just became kind of disenchanted, if you will, probably for various reasons. But in your heart of hearts, you've always kind of known, or you grew to know, what really fires your belly and what you wanted to do. And I read your book, which is an awesome book, which we're going to really unpack, which I think is so applicable to a lot of the challenges and struggles, but also the opportunities with our generation, the proximity principle. But in your book, you mentioned in the introduction your path to greatness that you embody now with respect to helping people change their lives through the art of radio. And I think I remember you mentioning, because I'm actually in the greater Atlanta area, and you started with Catalyst, which I'm very familiar with because I actually used to be, recently, I was a chief marketing officer for a faith-based nonprofit here in Georgia, and we had a partnership with Catalyst. And were you the original host of the Catalyst podcast?
Yes, sir. I was. It was not only was I the original host, it was my idea, which I write about in the early chapters of the proximity principle. I just wanted to start any way I could to get some broadcasting experience and verify that this desire was more than just kind of a fantasy thing, that I had the actual chops, the ability, that's talent, and that I had the passion. That is, I really love the idea of communicating publicly, and that's where the tie-in to politics was. I certainly had a desire to communicate on behalf of others, and so we started the Catalyst podcast when podcasts were just coming on the scene. They were not as ubiquitous as they are now. Right. In fact, I actually would listen to podcasts on an iPod.
I remember those days.
Yeah, all the Gen Xers, thank God. We've got a Gen X audience that know what an iPod is. But, that's where the term podcast came from, is that you would listen to it on your iPod. There was no iPhone at that time.
I know. I remember that back in the day. It's interesting. Ironically, you mentioned iPod, and I just have to give a moment of silence for iTunes. I don't know if you saw that. It's weird how those subtle things just kind of trigger you a little bit, like just the news of iTunes. Apple will be discontinuing iTunes on their desktop it's like, well, about time. At the same time, I felt a little sad. It's weird.
Yeah, it is. But it's like I don't remember the last time I did anything on the desktop of iTunes. It's all on the mobile.
Exactly. So it made perfect sense, but just another one of those things where you just have to say, moving on. Now, in your earlier years, even in college, or even, let's go back to when you were a young lad. Did you always knew, or you had a passion for speaking or communicating? Did you get validation from your family and friends in that skill?
Yeah, sure did. I love this question. And the reason I like this question, Adrian, is because this is the kind of thing that everybody needs to do if they're in that discovery stage. And you need to go back to childhood and begin to remember moments where passion and talent would reveal themselves in your life, and then use the word validation. That's so important. So the answer to that is I first got that validation of the desire and the talent at 5 years of age. I was a kindergartner, and the school I went to was doing a play, the high school, and they needed a little kid to play this newspaper boy. And basically just say, scream at the top of his lungs and act like he was selling papers in the corner. And so the speech teacher came to our kindergarten class and explained it. And I was the first person to raise my hand. And if all of you can go back to elementary school, whether you did this or it was somebody in your class that did it, but not just raise my hand. You know the deal where like you stand up halfway, but underneath the old school desk. And I wasn't just raising my hand. I was extending it as high as I could. And so I got the attention of the speech teacher. And I think a couple of the kids said they were interested in it, but I won the audition. And that was a moment where at 5 years of age, I was like, I want to be in the play. I want everybody to look at me. I mean, let's call it what it is. Because at 5 years of age, that innocence there, it's pure, unbridled passion. It's not, I love the arts. Right. I love theater. No, it's, I want everybody to look at me and say that I'm great. That's essentially what a 5-year-old was saying in that situation. And so I did it. It went really well. And I'll never forget. In fact, I remember it right now, like it was yesterday.
Oh, wow.
The applause, the butterflies, the fear, the excitement. It was this cocktail of wonderment. And it grabbed me. And that's when I knew. And then throughout the rest of my school journey, I was always the guy who, the kid, I should say, who volunteered for the plays. I was always auditioning for school plays, got the lead roles. I was always involved in assemblies at school, always willing to talk and, all that kind of stuff. So, yes, there's no question that as a young lad, using your words, I knew very early on that I enjoyed performing and that I was good at it. And so that was certainly very clear to me, and it guided me into everything that I did, because I knew I love the performance aspect, the pressure that people are looking at me and I got to deliver something audibly. That was very obvious.
Wow. I love it. I love that story. 5 years old, kindergarten, pretending to distribute the print media newspaper. Then it led you to real-time media and broadcast and podcasting and print again with this book. So great story. So the proximity principle, and I mentioned early in the intro, we talked a little bit about it. Obviously, when in your journey, you talked about how you worked for Ramsey as in Ramsey Solutions. Then you became a Ramsey Personality. You host the Ken Coleman Show, which is an awesome show, the Entreleadership Podcast. And the Ken Coleman Show, that's also on not only in the podcasting mediums, but also on SiriusXM, correct?
That's exactly right. We're on SiriusXM 121.
Okay.
Every day live at 2 Eastern. And then we take that live show and we podcast it.
Got it.
Every day. And people need to stay tuned, because we are moving into national radio syndication in the month of June. So KenColeman.com if you're looking for where the show might be in your area. So we're really excited about that. We're also on YouTube as well. We take a clip a day of a call, and we'll put it out on YouTube. They can search the Ken Coleman Show there, and very soon we'll be live streaming the show, so you can watch the entire show on YouTube as well. So lots of places to consume it.
Wow. Well, first, much congrats on the national exposure, and that is awesome. You're hitting all the mediums: live stream, YouTube, just making sure you change lives wherever people are. So it's a great show. So the Proximity Principle, this latest and greatest book, which was very recently released, and it's an awesome book. Audience, we're going to unpack this some more, but I encourage you, definitely when you get off, stop listening to this, or at the same time, as long as you're not driving, make sure you purchase this book if you have it, because I know that many of you who listen to this show are feeling stuck or squeezed or stressed or not sure that you're doing what you want to do. Well, Ken has a solution for you with this book. So Ken, what was that moment that led you to craft this book, and why did you decide to write this book at this time?
Yeah, fun story. I was driving into work about a year ago now, somewhere in that range, and I was at a stoplight, and I had an interview like this on a podcast. I was a guest of somebody else that morning, and it was the first thing on my calendar. And I was looking at the pre-prepared questions that the host had sent me, and one of the last questions was, you started late in broadcasting in your early 30s, and now you're a national broadcaster. If you could boil down your success to one thing, what would it be? And I remember at first feeling like, well, that's impossible to do. And then I felt like, okay, well, let me try to honor the question and what would be one big thing that I would share. And started driving. The light turns green, and I'm just thinking as I drive, and I had the thought I was really good at getting around the right people and in the right places.
Got it.
And as soon as I said that, Adrian, you've had thoughts like that before where you go, wow, I think that's pretty good. I could teach on that. So I started thinking, well, I'm going to share that on the radio show today.
Right.
And so now I'm in content creation mode as I'm driving, and I got to another stoplight and stopped. And that's when the word proximity just popped in my mind.
Wow.
And I had thoughts all about proximity. And then I got really excited. And so I got my phone and I recorded just a quick audio memo in my phone. And I said, the proximity principle says, in order to do what I want to do, I've got to be around people that are doing it and in places where it is happening. And I hit the stop button. And I was like, that's really, really good. And I was so excited about it, playing around with it. I said, well, I'm going to share it on the show today. And I came into the office and shared it with my leader. I said, hey, this is either really good or really cheesy. Can I share this with you? He's like, yeah, hit me. And felt really good about it. He loved it. And so I used it on the show that day and began to use it subsequently, throughout, every day when it was relevant to somebody who knew what they wanted to do but wasn't quite sure how to get there. And the audience began to take hold of it, which is always what you want. And they began to email and call and reference the proximity principle. And so that's how it became an actual principle. And it's universal. All I did was put language on it, new language.
Right.
And it's not anything that I, created. It's just I came up with a way to say it, and it sticks with people. They can remember it, and it gives people clarity as they begin to kind of look around and see, hey, this actually works. The right people, right places. If I put myself there, the opportunity is going to hit me. And it actually goes. So that's where it lived first, and then the idea for the book came several months later.
Okay. Wow. From phone memo, voice record. I've done that so many times, and sometimes I haven't, and I hate it I didn't because I totally forgot what I wanted to say. So you were very smart at that moment.
You got to do it. Hey, months later, it becomes a #1 bestseller. So you're kind of like, oh boy, how often am I leaving good content on the table?
Wow. And, and there's another special nugget in that story too, which you not only had the thought and the vision, you recorded the thought and the idea, but you also wanted to, I guess, help validate it or share it with someone that you trusted and admired, who was a leader in your group or your circle, if you will. And I thought, and I didn't want that to go unnoticed, because a lot of times we may have ideas and we may feel so, not the word egotistical for lack of a better word, but it always helps, especially for people that you trust, to just share it and see, hey, like you said, is this a great idea or is it a horrible idea? And you did this. I wanted to make sure that I underscore that, which I thought was really good.
And thank you for doing that. And I thank you on behalf of your audience. What you have to see, there's two things I did there. One, I took it to a guy who was my leader and somebody I trusted, and I knew he'd tell me the truth. The second thing I did was take it to the audience. And both of those things are a simple little thing that most people don't do, and it's called testing. Don't launch a product. Don't launch an idea. Test it first. Test it, test it, test it. And then when you're done testing it, test it again. And so that is such a valuable experiment to test things, even if it's a content piece. Don't try to launch a book. Don't try to test it. It's so valuable to get real feedback from people and to see, do I have something here? And by the way, it takes a little bit of courage to test it. Sometimes people will launch something because they'd rather launch it and fail than test it and somebody reject them. But I'd much rather test an idea and get rejected and save me from, the bubble wrap, which ends up being way bigger of a failure.
I love that. Approach. Test it. That is so true. And many of us don't do it. And many of us that do end up, like you said, having a national #1 bestseller and changing lives. That's a great idea. So the proximity principle, you're right, it is so simple, but yet so powerful. And for you to craft and paint the picture the way you have, it's all about getting around the right people and being in the right places. I love that. So speaking of people, can you just give an example of some of the people you write about in the book that people need to be close to, in proximity to really, achieve their professional goals? The types of people?
Sure. I'll run through the 5 people, and then folks can go get the book, and I'll just maybe pick one.
Okay.
The 5 people are the professor, the professional, the producer, the peer, and the mentor. These are 5 archetypes that I unpack in the book, explain why they are what we call them, where they are, and how you get to them and what you're looking to do. Then we have 5 places, as you know. So I'll just pick one of the people, the 5 people, and I'll use an example from my own journey, and that is the professor. And I think when people hear the word professor, they automatically, their mind jumps to, we're talking about the college professor, and it's not necessarily a classroom individual. What we're talking about here is the professor in the truest, purest sense of the word, meaning they know what you need to know, they teach what you need to know, and they like to do it. Like they're invested. Because anybody can be a teacher. If you come over to my house and I teach you how to make a drink or a cocktail, well, I've just taught you something. But I'm talking about somebody who it is their desire, it is their craft to instruct. And they love the craft of instructing, and they love the topic of which they're instructing. So anyway, the professor. And in my situation, you've read the book, you know the story. I'm 31, 32 years of age. I don't know anybody in broadcasting. I don't have a degree in broadcasting. I feel like I've got the talent of communication, but I need to get in and I need to start learning. And so I signed up for a broadcasting class that was being formulated. It was the first one this guy had ever done, but he was a very successful radio and television producer in the Atlanta area. So he was legitimate. I did my homework on that, but the class itself was new. But I thought, you know what? This is low risk. It's a 6-week course. I'm going to take it.
Right.
And so I signed up. And, I was the older guy. I'm in my 30s. It was 3 weeks in before the young guys in the class stopped calling me sir and realized I wasn't an instructor. So, I'm in this situation where I'm just, humble beginnings, learning everything I can about how to talk on a mic, how to write a news blurb, on sports radio, how to read it, how to edit it, all these things. On the mic, off the mic, the whole 9 yards. And it was really valuable for me, because I'd learned some of the basics of broadcasting that I still use today. And even more importantly, it wasn't just what I learned, is that I got to do it. So I learned about it, but then he would put us in these situations to where my first live broadcast was high school football play-by-play on the internet. 2 people were listening. the kid next to me and my wife at home because she's a good woman. Mm-hmm. But I was doing it, and I got the opportunity to do some TV stuff, and all small, hardly anybody paying attention. But we were learning in the classroom, and then we got the chance to do it. And then even more importantly than the learning and the doing is the connecting. And I made some great relationships, connections as a result of that 6-week class. And that those turned into better opportunities and bigger opportunities to continue to prove to myself and to others that I had what it took. And so that's what proximity does. Proximity to the right people and to the right places, Adrian, allows us to learn, do, and connect. And if you're looking for a simple recipe for success, learning, doing, connecting, if you make that a part of your daily rhythm, there is no stopping you.
Love it. LDC, learn, do, connect. And many of us, we're so aggressive when it comes to, or hopefully we are, with learning. But it's that middle part, a lot of times we get a little stagnant because, we can learn, we can consume all the content, we could take all the courses, but putting it into action the way you did without any type of reservation or hesitation, I should say, with respect to how broad your audience is, because you said there are like 2 to 3 people listening. You wanted to get the practice because you knew your end goal. And so I love how you broke that down as you learned, but you also had to do it. You had to get behind the mic. You had to articulate. You had to tell stories. You had to craft a narrative based on the game and the high school, and no matter who was listening. And then through that process, I love it, you develop and establish and nurture key relationships that have benefited you to this day. Learn, do, connect. I love that. I love the way that you put that there. And I think it's so beneficial to our audience.
Well, see, it's important that you understand that in this journey, there's going to be knowledge. You've got to acquire knowledge in order to get qualified.
Right.
But it's beyond knowledge that takes you to another level. And all of this is progression. So I'm learning, then I've got to take the knowledge and I've got to actually put it into practice. And that's the relationship there. And then again, which what really comes out of all of this is as you're learning from somebody, doing with somebody else, all of these things are about connections, and they're going to connect you to other right people and put you in other right places.
Love it. Love it. So let's unpack a little bit the power of connection, the power of doing, the power of places, especially when it comes to people like us. This show is called Gen X Amplified, which is one of the verticals that I'm passionate about, helping our generation not only become better leaders, because we are now the generation of leaders, whether it's at work, at home, we're parents, we're taking care, not only leading our children, but sometimes we're leading our elders, we're taking care of them. We are, whether it's government, schools, professions, the community, the churches, ages 40 to 55, a lot of us are in leadership positions, but yet, being a Gen Xer, sometimes we do get a little overlooked. We do have the negative stigma of even the name X, which you and I joked a little bit about. But, as a Gen Xer who many are in mid-career, midlife, are feeling stuck, how would you say the proximity principle and those methods would be so beneficial to people in their 40s who are feeling squeezed, who on their current role may not be satisfied? They want to either progress or move up, or they want to move out and do something else. How can the proximity principle of getting around the right people in the right places help specifically to the pain points and the nuances of the Gen X generation?
Yeah, it's a great question. And here's how the proximity principle really helps our generation, because they are feeling stuck. And yet what's keeping them stuck is fear, doubt, and pride. I'll break that down really quick. So you're afraid of financial failure. If you switch gears, switch careers, you're afraid of being rejected. You're afraid of what peers, family are going to say. The doubt comes in and says, it's too late. You're in your mid-40s or your late 30s. It's too late. Your ship has sailed. Or the doubt comes and says, you don't have what it takes. That was just something you dreamed about as a teenager or a young lady coming out of college or whatever it is. And so doubt rears its head there. And then, of course, pride is that you won't actually ask for help. You know, I'm a middle-aged professional, whatever, and I won't ask anybody for help because, well, I'm just too old to do that, or I'm already esteemed in one career. Why would I want to start over? That's pride. So fear, doubt, and pride are what are holding people at the starting line. And so the proximity principle gives people the belief, gives them the truth as the antidote to those three lies. So when you realize, wait a second, this is not as insane as it feels. It's not as hard as it seems. And so the proximity principle kind of pulls away those lies of fear, doubt, and pride, and it shines the light forward on, wait a second, I can actually switch gears at 43 and 53. I get that call on my show all the time. Hey, Ken, I'm in my 50s. Is it too late? And the answer is no.
Right.
The proximity principle just, again, is the proven path. It's clear. It's a clear path. You go, oh, well, that makes sense. If I get around the right people and in the right places, eventually opportunity is going to show up at my front door, not me meandering around, wandering, looking for just this lucky opportunity. And that's what keeps people from going after it. They go, I'm too old for this, or this is silly. This doesn't make any sense. No, wait a second. You can stay in that current job that you're doing very well at, and you can begin to progress. And eventually you'll step from that current job that you're considering as a part of your midlife crisis and step into your dream work. Why? Because the proximity principle will get you there. And it'll get you there a lot faster than you realize. But it is a discipline of showing up and doing what it takes and waiting as long as it takes. But when you do that, when you have that mindset, then opportunity will show up.
I love that. You ended off, which is great, mindset. And speaking of fear, doubt, and pride, which those three pillars, if you will, of getting unstuck, especially as a Gen Xer, pride is such a powerful one. And sometimes it is very unfortunate. And we're all prideful at times in our lives, and especially in this generation. You mentioned, like, if you're in the workforce, many mid-career Gen Xers that are in this multi-generational workforce, which for the first time, it's never been like this before. There are 4, sometimes even 5. You may have some silence still hanging around, including the Gen Zs that are just graduating college. So you have 4 to 5 generations. You're mid-career, you're Gen X, and these millennials, these magnificent millennials who are very aggressive, which I don't blame them, not to paint all with a brush, but I don't blame them. Like, they want to succeed and they want to learn. They want mentorship. A lot of Gen Xers are prideful. They don't want to let the younger generation know what they don't know, or they're fearful of the boomer looking at them in a different way. What advice would you give that Gen Xer who, for some reason, that they are shrugging their shoulders at the millennial who could help them and who they can help as well? How would you encourage them? Two
things. Number one, I would want to let them in on a pretty broad truth that everybody accepts, that no man or woman of success has ever done it on their own. So let's just put that there. That's the first thing. I'd slide that across the table and go, hey, Gen Xer with a bunch of pride, you're not unique to the world. Anybody who's ever been successful has had to stand on the shoulders of others. They've not done it on their own. So what makes you so special? Right. The second thing I would say is that great men and women throughout history have also sought out people that are younger than them to learn from them. Because of the shift in generations. So great leaders are always talking to younger leaders.
Yes.
What's working, what's not working, how do you do this? I'm reminded of a story that Coach K, the legendary Hall of Fame basketball coach at Duke, told me once, that every offseason he makes it a point to call a couple of younger coaches who he admires what they're doing in their programs or in that past season, and he'll have specific things he wants to ask them about, whether it be how they watch film or how they recruit or how they run a defense or whatever. And so you're talking about one of the most prolific winners in the history of sports, not just basketball. And I've heard this story from tons of well-known coaches who've told me this personally. They're always learning from somebody else, and they're not afraid to call a younger coach. And so to your specific question, if you're not learning from a lot of different people, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, you're dying. You may not realize it yet, but you're just standing there in the middle of the road and everybody's passing you. So this isn't just a millennial issue if you're Gen Xer. You need to be learning from all generations.
Yes.
There's something you can learn. But get out of the context of what you know best and start looking at what some of the things they're doing best and how that might be relevant to you, and then go learn that.
Wow. I love it. And speaking of people and your relationships that you've attained or you're learning from or you're interacting with daily, like the millennials or the boomers or whomever in your circle, what's also fascinating, and I do speak about this a lot as well when it comes to just empowering Gen Xers, is that because of our age, because of the years of experience relative to a younger generation, we have acquired an inventory of relationships we built over the years. Now, we may not communicate with that former colleague at our job, 10 years ago or in our school relationships, but there's power in, would you say, in maybe if you are at a point where you're feeling stuck or you're at an inflection point and you need some guidance, you need somebody to share ideas with, you need some instruction or mentoring, go back into your Rolodex and reach out to some of your previous colleagues or people that you've established these relationships. What would you say to that, especially the power of, as you get into your 40s and late 30s, go back and see how you can recultivate some of your past relationships to get you to the destination and the goals that you're pursuing?
Well, I think that's absolutely right, that the acquaintances are so powerful. In fact, there's a sociologist, I forget his name. It was Mark, I forget his name, Van Stetter or something like that. You can look it up very easily. But if you look up sociologist study on the power of acquaintances in getting a job, guy did a study on this, and it came out that your acquaintances, so these are people that would be a level outside of your close personal network. Right. They are the ones that are leading to jobs most of the time. And so I love what you're talking about. Some people go, Ken, I don't know anybody. I don't know where to start. Wait a second. If you've got a 20-year career, or a 15-year career like you just gave us in that context, then you have lots of relationships. And I would think of the positive ones, and I would do exactly what you're talking about. You reach out, and what you realize is, we write about this, by the way, in the book, The Proximity Principle. It's in the last section of practices. We call this making a web of connections. You think about a spider web, and you think about the strength of a web. It's amazing how strong that web is. And you think about, if you were to just, for fun, on a piece of paper right now, draw your best version of a spider web, and I mean intricately, like what's it really look like? And you'll notice all those different connection points that come together to make up a web. And a web catches prey for the spider, and the web of connection catches opportunity for us. So in short, you need to be looking at your entire life. If it's a positive relationship, you ought to be reaching back out and connecting and saying, hey, here's where I'm at, or here's what I want to do, here's where I'm going, and I'm looking to connect with these type of people, or this, and you begin to just spread the word. And what you'll find is that we as humans want to help other people. Right. And so it'll open up all types of opportunity.
Love it. Web of connection. I think the gentleman, Mark Granovetter, I think that's his name.
Granovetter, there it is.
Yeah, 1973 study about the strength of ties and acquaintances. I love that. I just had to quickly look it up, because when I hear something like that, I have to write it.
And usually I've got that guy's name in my head, but thank you for looking that up so quickly. But it's fascinating. Yes. And, just one other thing, because this is kind of the world I'm in. So let's talk right to Xers real quick. Sometimes people will call up my show, and Adrian, they'll say, I just don't know many people. And I go, do your kids play sports? And they'll say, yeah. And I go, how many parents on average are at practices and games every week? And they'll say, well, a couple dozen. I go, yeah, a lot of people. How many people do you think they know? You're already being nice to these people, presumably. You're getting along, you're cheering for the kids, you're not the jerk sports parent. Right. So presumably, we're having a little bit of small talk with these. I know every season, there's always a group of dads, and we're hanging out during practices or at games. And same thing with the moms. Yep. And so you're creating small talk, and you've got these very positive relationships. Yes, they're shallow as far as the depth and the length, but you get along with these people. How about walking up to them going, hey, listen, I'm looking to move from here to here, or I'm looking to apply at this company over here. You know anybody that works there? And it doesn't mean it's going to yield something every time. But my point is, those are positive acquaintances that can yield all kinds of goodness.
That is so powerful what you just said. It makes me think about my relationships. And I recently was an assistant coach to my son's basketball team, and in those interactions when we are at the games and at practices and even at the school events, it's right in front of us. But you mentioned fear, doubt, and pride. What will help overcome a lot of that fear, doubt especially, is just take a step back, like you said, Ken, and just it's right in front of you. Look at the day-to-day connections that you are exposed to through your kids, through your job, through your church, if you are attend church, or just the grocery store. Maybe you are shopping on aisle 3 and you see an acquaintance that you see every now and then, like this in the same aisle, shopping for the same cereal on Fridays. So just strike up a conversation. You never know what their pain points could be congruent to the solutions that you may have, and vice versa. And so I love the way that you package that. This book is such a powerful playbook. I truly feel when it comes to, not for all generations, obviously, but for this show and a lot of these listeners who are feeling stuck, just understanding the power of taking a step back, doing a reflection, and looking at the people that you are around and the places that you are located and you may not be, or that you're not around, and see how you can get closer to your goals. I can talk about this stuff all day because I'm a geek for this. But Ken, before I let you go, I have a staple question that I ask all of my guests on Gen X Amplified, and it's to get into a little bit of their personality and to have a little fun. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So Ken, if there was a song that would play every time you enter a room or walk down the street that perfectly fits your story and the brand of Ken Coleman, what song would that be? What would be your own personal theme song?
Running Down the Dream by Tom Petty.
Whoa. I love that.
I love the song. I love the lyrics. And based on how you set that question up, that has certainly been my story. It still is my story. And that would be it.
That is your story, huh?
Well, just the chorus, running down the dream.
Running down the dream, never would come to me. Yeah.
Working on a mystery. Going wherever it leads. That describes the process of discovery, which is the first stage of realizing the dream, which is what I teach every day on the show. Wow. So I just love that. I think that it encapsulates what I'm doing and then trying to teach others to do.
Yes. I love that. Is so fitting. Never would come to me, working on a mystery, going wherever it leads. And that's what you did from that moment. Mrs. whatever her name is. Hey, who wants to be the newspaper boy? Yeah,
that's right.
Me. Now look at you. Look at you now. You go. So Ken, this has been an awesome conversation. Please tell everyone that's listening how they can get a hold of you, how they can buy the book, how can they listen to your show, and just be enraptured in the Ken Coleman world, if you will.
Well, KenColeman.com is the website for any kind of connection to see what we're doing, where we're doing it. And of course, the book is available there at KenColeman.com as well, or anywhere books are sold. And we want people to also feel free to listen to the radio show, whether it be on radio or SiriusXM or just the podcast of the radio show. We have a ton of podcasters that call in every day. The phone number is at KenColeman.com. So if you're stuck, confused, scared, or beat down, give us a call on the show. That's why we do it. I'm on 5 days a week, and we're there for you.
Yeah, let me double down on that. I've watched on YouTube and listened to the show, and I tell you, Ken, he comes prepared. I mean, these questions are coming in. Like, you see it, you hear it real time, and he has his notepad. He's writing notes. He's contemplating, and he's providing solutions. And I've heard some of the most powerful questions and struggles and pain points. And at the end of the call, man, you definitely have a great way of navigating that listener and that caller to a place where they need to go. So I'd encourage all of you that's listening to my show, definitely listen to the Ken Coleman Show. Buy his book, The Proximity Principle, in stores, online, everywhere. Ken, thank you so much for spending time with me and our exceptional amplified audience.
Well, Adrian, it's been a pleasure, and I'm so grateful that you had me on. Thank you.
Likewise. Take care. Hey, that was Ken Coleman, career expert, best-selling author, host of his own show on SiriusXM, The Ken Coleman Show, and the host of the Entreleadership Podcast. Lots of valuable nuggets in that conversation. I really enjoyed that chat, right? Now, if you haven't already, please make sure you purchase and read his latest and greatest book, The Proximity Principle. Definitely food for thought and action for us Gen Xers who are in mid-career, who are feeling stuck and just want to accelerate our growth professionally. And as always, thank you so much for listening to Gen X Amplified. And remember to get the full show notes and to catch up on all of the other episodes, go over to the website genxamplified.com. And again, as always, if you have enjoyed this content, please go over to Apple Podcast or iTunes and give us a rating and review, because when you do, more people will hear and learn about the podcast and our message will spread. And again, as always, you've been listening to Gen X Amplified, the podcast dedicated to you, the powerful and exceptional generation between those brilliant boomers and magnificent millennials. And remember, it is more than a podcast. It is a movement. Take care.